Good morning, everybody. It's PennLive opinion editor John Micek. It's the Monday before Election Day. I'm joined this morning by the redoubtable Jeffrey Lord. We're going to spend the next 10 or 15 minutes talking about what to look for at the polls tomorrow, Tuesday, and what races he's tracking. So without further ado, Jeffrey, good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Wet.
It is that.
It is wet.
So and let's start with that.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be equally horrible tomorrow. What does rain do for turnout? The old joke is Republicans love rain.
Yeah. It doesn't help certain folks when it rains, and that's just a fact of life. You know, people look out the window and say, "Oh, do I have to do this?" And sometimes they're inclined to say, "Do I have to do this anyway?"
Yes.
So this could play a role. We've had several events here, of which this might be the latest, between the Kavanaugh nomination, the would-be bomber, the shooting in Pittsburgh, the weather.
Yeah.
If the weather plays a role in this, all of which could have an impact of some kind on tomorrow.
Does that affect one side more than the other?
Well, I think the Kavanaugh thing was a huge boost for Republicans. Everybody I talked to said it really did, quote unquote, energize the base. Then you had the other two events, which I think took the momentum out of that. I mean, you know, serious stuff.
Yeah.
And now you have the weather. I just don't know what to say at this point. As I said over the weekend in my column, as Yogi Berra said, predictions are hard, particularly the future.
President Trump out pretty much every day, it seems like, in another,
right.
all in states that he carried in 16, all
right.
in important races. He's wanted to make this midterm a referendum on him. Is this an instance of being careful for what you wish for, or what do you think?
No, I think it's a good thing. You know, I handled House races for President Reagan in 1986 in the White House. And one of the things we did, and he was perfectly willing to do, was do a version of what President Trump is doing, which is to say, do events for candidates, House candidates, gubernatorial, Senate candidates, raise money, and get out there and do this. On one occasion, we had him flung across the country, and then we were going to bring him back to Washington. And Mrs. Reagan put her foot down and said, "My husband may be president, but he's also 70, whatever he was at that time." And she says, "We are staying in Los Angeles, period." Mm-hmm. You know, yes, ma'am. But the good thing about it is that the average loss of House seats by 1986 for an incumbent party in a 6-year midterm election was 32 seats. We reduced it to 5. Mm-hmm. So what President Trump is doing is what President Reagan did in spades, and you know, that's the way to do it, absolutely.
We know the math on this. Dems need 23 seats to flip the House. The political reports now putting the net pickup anywhere between 30 and 40 seats. What does history tell us about the mood, about the potential shift come Tuesday?
You know, I keep thinking of that fabled election year of 2016, when
do we know anything anymore?
Yeah. I mean, where you know, my favorite was the New York Times saying Hillary Clinton had a 98 or 95% chance of winning the presidency, and you know, one of the factors that are unknown that are particular to President Trump is that you've got, in this divided country, a lot of people out there who are Trump supporters and don't say it, mm-hmm. and don't tell pollsters. So all of a sudden they materialize at the polls,
right.
and everybody is surprised. So I would be cautious. I met Charlie Cook in the long ago and far away. He, generally speaking, knows his business, but I would just be careful.
Let's run around the country. A lot of great races out there, a lot of them making headlines right now. Let's start with Florida.
Well, you know, very close. The significance of it is, I mean, Andrew Gillum, the Democrat, is basically your out-and-out socialist. If he does win this race, and I'm not sure that he will, but if he does, I think we could be talking a predictor for the National Democratic Party in 2020 that is left as some people thought they were in 2016. They're headed sharp left. Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, Andrew Gillum himself, if he's the governor of Florida, any number of people who would take the party in that direction, which I think presidential race would be a mistake, but hey, democracy is democracy, and if that's where the grassroots, the base of the Democratic Party wants to go, they'll go there.
Head a little further north to Georgia, a really great race there for governor as well. Potential for not only the first African-American woman to be governor, but first African-American woman to be governor nationwide.
Right. This is Georgia, and to be perfectly candid, I'm still skeptical about her chances. One of the interesting things, and we've seen this in Texas, in the Texas Senate race, is that when Hollywood, either with cash or personal appearances, in this case in Georgia with Oprah, Will Ferrell, etc., jumping in, that can have a backlash with voters who basically resent outsiders coming into their state, particularly Hollywood elites, etc. So I would be curious to see what now.
You look back to 2008 though, and Oprah's stunt for Barack Obama. I saw a figure that she shifted something like 1 million votes into Obama's column.
The difference is that Obama was running for president. This is a state election for governor or senator in Texas. Those are different. I think, she could have an effect. I mean, she could have had an effect in 2008 in all kinds of places that thought she was just terrific. I'm not sure that applies to Georgia. I'm not sure that it solidifies maybe the black vote, but it could also solidify, non-minorities who think they're being hustled by a Hollywood star. So I really will be interested to see how that works.
I've known better than to argue with Oprah Winfrey, but...
Yes, exactly. Very persuasive.
Yes.
And speaking of 2020...
keep wondering what happened if you open the door and you just say, yeah, I can't even. And having her show up on the front porch would be really something.
Absolutely.
Texas, Beto O'Rourke, Ted Cruz, another tight one there, it looks like.
I still think,
do you think
Ted
Cruz takes on?
I still
Why?
Think, because this is Texas. I know Ted Cruz. He's a conservative. I think that he is representative of Texas as a whole, and that the whole Beto O'Rourke thing will vanish. If you remember back,
the state is changing though. You get into Houston and its suburbs and exurbs, down to San Antonio, a lot bluer than or purpler at least than it used to be.
These were the arguments I heard when what was her name, Wendy Davis.
Right.
Was the Democrat running for governor, I think, of Texas. And good Lord, she got more national publicity and celebrity endorsements and all that sort of thing, and her candidacy finally, at the end, crashed and burned. I think that Beto O'Rourke will probably lose, but will be heard from again. And that's an interesting phenomenon. Right here in Pennsylvania, we have Bob Casey Jr., and Bob Casey Jr., let's be candid, is in the United States Senate in the first place because his father ran and lost. Right? I think it was 3 runs for governor.
Correct.
Losing all of them, and kept at it. And the other person we have that we both knew was Arlen Specter, who lost a re-election race for, he lost a race for mayor.
That's right.
He lost re-election for DA. He lost a Senate race to John Hines, and he lost a governor's race to Dick Thornburgh. And by 1980, when everybody thought, well, that's it for Arlen, he wins. He not only wins the Senate seat, but he becomes the longest serving, I think it was 5 terms, senator. So there is something to be said for repetition, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if let's say Scott Wagner loses, that he comes back, and just on that principle alone. Because one of the assets you take out of a race in a state like our state of Pennsylvania is name recognition.
Right.
And once you get a major nomination and you campaign all over the state, even if you lose, you are now well known.
Let's unpack that for a moment. So let us say that Mr. Wagner comes out at the wrong end of it on Tuesday. We've seen some of the polling numbers, so they often have numbers last week, that it looks like it might be on the order of an Ivan Itkin or Lynn Swan scale thrashing. Tom Ridge in 1998, second term re-elect. Ed Rendell, second term re-elect in 2006. If Scott Wagner loses by, say, 20 some odd points, why do you think he's rehabilitatable?
because I don't see any competition for him out there if that happens. I mean, whoever is out there, I mean, Lou Barletta, I mean, the same sort of thing applies. Somebody else is going to have
he runs again. So he runs again for governor in 20.
Sure. I mean, our state is famous for this. And as I say, you come out of it with name recognition, which somebody who is starting as a congressman, as a state senator, doesn't have. And you get it when you do this. For better or worse, you get it. And 4 years later, or 6 years later, depending on what it is you're doing, that can be an enormous asset when you're being challenged for a nomination by somebody who's got to start right from scratch.
One of the things I've been struck by is with these governor races across the country, you get hard pressed to think about who the Democratic bench might be in 2020. But you look at some of these gubernatorial races and you think maybe that's where it'll come from. Maybe that's where it'll bubble up from.
Yeah, inevitably in the American media, the attention is focused on Congress. And so the names that all get mentioned for Democratic presidential possibilities are U.S. senators.
Yes. Who historically have really bad luck.
Yeah,
yes.
They do. Warren Harding, John F. Kennedy, I think that's about it.
Right.
So the governors is where, can be really potent. I mean, if Andrew Gillum does win this, yeah, he would be, from a Democratic perspective, a very viable candidate for president. And there may be others out there, unknown. Andrew Cuomo, I think, probably wants a shot at this. If Gavin Newsom becomes the governor of California, mm-hmm. he would be another possibility. So I think that's a field that they've got that will be looked at, the media aside, and their fixation on Washington figures.
Yeah, my operating theory on this now is that it might be a woman or a person of color in 2020 for Democrats, just because they seemingly exhausted their run of older white guys.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to, and ideology is going to play a real role in this, because I do think the Bernie Sanders people are still steaming over the loss the last time, and they are not going to put up with some establishment figure, no matter their race or gender, Hillary. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that's going to play a real role here. I told this story, and possibly to you before, but when I was at the Democratic Convention in 2016, I walked into the hall. I don't think I was there 10 seconds, and some woman that I didn't know recognized me from TV and comes over to me and makes it emphatically clear that she was a Sanders delegate from Indiana,
right? And
there was no way ever that she was going to lift a finger for Hillary Clinton. She was quite emphatic. I think that sentiment is still out there, and it applies not just to Hillary, but to any person who was seen as Hillary-esque, mm-hmm. A representative of the establishment of the Democratic Party. I think there would be an open revolt.
Let's talk about the president's closing argument real fast. The focus on the migrant column coming up from Central America.
That's the one we left out.
Yeah, still weeks before they might even get here, assuming they even get here at all. This talk about deploying the military down there for largely window dressing, since they have no law enforcement role, but in a meaningful way. I mean, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think that immigration is a huge issue for a lot of people. I would prefer it to be, frankly, the economy, because just driving here today, I'm looking at all these now hiring signs mm-hmm. all over the place. I mean, that's a good thing. But television being what it is, the pictures of this horde of folks coming up from the South, I think is a very, very potent issue, and I'm sure the president is going to be harping on that a lot. And to get back to the Texas race, there was an undercover video with some O'Rourke staffers saying that some of their campaign money was being funneled to help them. Well, I suspect that would be an issue all of a sudden out of the blue. So, yeah, I think this is a very big deal.
All right, so let's bottom line it, and we'll go out this way. In the House, how many seats picked up?
Oh, possibly 23, possibly a small majority.
Does the Senate flip?
No, no. I think the Senate will stay in Republican hands, and more so.
Does Scott Walker hang on in Wisconsin?
You got me there. The reason is I just think in general, when a politician is running for a third or fourth term, whatever it is, that voters, regardless of ideology, tend to get tired of that person. Offhand, I'd give him an edge, but I wouldn't be surprised.
And the spread in PA Senate and PA Governor on Tuesday night?
Wow. Hard to say. I mean, my gut tells me that things will not be so well. On the other hand, all of these not undecideds, but silent Trump voters out there could well show up. And again, the rain.
Yes.
Who knows?
All right. Jeffrey Lord.
All right.
Thank you.
Friend, thank you.
You bet. Thanks, everybody.